This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service that showcases fantastic films from all over the world. Start your 1-month free trial right now by going to mubi.com/entertaintheelk. I have people ask me all the time, Adam, or they usually just call me Elk, where do you come up with the ideas for your videos? Well, there's not just one way. It might be a movie or a TV show that I just can't get out of my head, or maybe it's a writer or a director and examining one of their techniques, lesser known history, or finding a unique angle on a topic that's already been explored a lot of times. Or in some cases, I don't know anything about a topic, but I want to learn. And so I use the video itself as an excuse to teach myself. That's what I did for my Monet, Shakespeare, and Hemingway videos. That's the way it normally goes. Other times you just come across something while scrolling across social media and you find something that just sounds interesting. And that's exactly what happened in this case. I was scrolling through Twitter and I came across this quote from Alfred Hitchcock that said, "Film your murders like love scenes and film your love scenes like murders." Yeah, that sounds like a good video. Very few directors have stylistic trademarks associated with them in their work. Even fewer have multiple trademarks. Alfred Hitchcock had many, including the MacGuffin, which is an insignificant object in itself that is necessary primarily for the plot and motivations of the characters. The Wrong Man plot, where the main character is swept up in a case of mistaken identity and on the run. Blondes, personal cameos. But the trademark I want to focus on here in this video is Hitchcock's obsession with voyeurism. Now, what is voyeurism? In its simplest terms, a voyeur is someone who gets sexual gratification from watching others. This might be watching a person dance on stage, or lingering on a part of their body, but most commonly, a voyeur is someone who takes pleasure in watching a person without their consent or knowledge, in a place where that person would expect privacy, like their home, while engaging in something private, scandalous, or in extreme cases, painful. And this perversion of sex and violence is highlighted many times throughout Hitchcock's filmography. One of his earliest films, The Pleasure Garden, explores voyeurism through a simple story about chorus girls. There are sweeping shots of wide-eyed, grinning men in the audience as they watch the girls dance, and even a POV shot of one particular man peering through opera glasses in order to get a closer look at the girl's legs. Perhaps Hitchcock's most blatant example of voyeurism is in his film Rear Window, a film about a character who spies on his unwitting neighbors in their most intimate and vulnerable moments. Through his use of the camera, especially the point of view shots, Hitchcock puts the audience into the position of voyeur. All of a sudden, we're the ones peering in through the windows, watching what we're not supposed to. It's all part of the thrill and excitement. We're forced to watch, and even become complicit in moments of extreme intimacy or violence. Sometimes both at the same time. This is where the blurring of lines takes place. Through the lens of Hitchcock, sex and violence don't seem so different. This goes back to the quote I mentioned earlier, "Film your murders like love scenes and film your love scenes like murders." I tried looking for the source of this quote, and what I found was that this quote was never actually said by Hitchcock himself. It was said about him in the book Hitchcock, Truffaut. Near the end of his book, after hours and hours of conversations between the two renowned directors, Francois Truffaut recalls a night when he attended a gala in honor of Hitchcock and how he felt after hundreds of film excerpts washed over him throughout the evening. I knew all of these movies by heart, but upon seeing the excerpts isolated from their contexts, I was struck by the sincerity and savagery of Hitchcock's work. It was impossible not to see that the love scenes were filmed like murder scenes, and the murder scenes like love scenes. I knew his work. In fact, I thought I knew it very well. Yet that evening, I was awed by what I saw on the screen. Splashes of color, fireworks, ejaculations, sighs, death rattles, screams, blood, tears, twisted wrists. It occurred to me that in Hitchcock's cinema, which is definitely more sexual than sensual, to make love and to die are one and the same. Hitchcock honed his craft during the silent era and throughout the years of the Hays Code. I covered the Hays Code more extensively in my video Whatever Happened to the X Rating, but essentially it was a precursor to the current MPAA rating system that had an extensive list of what could and couldn't be shown on screen. Two of the biggest perpetrators were sex and violence, and that forced filmmakers like Hitchcock to use tricks and loopholes in order to skirt the censors. For example, a kiss that lasted too long on screen, which was basically longer than 3 seconds, was against the Hays Code. So in Notorious, Hitchcock had stars Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman pull apart every few seconds, but not from their embrace. The result was a kiss that all in all lasted about 2.5 minutes. And the censors allowed it because no individual kiss ever lasted longer than 3 seconds. Hitchcock would also use cinematic language in order to create innuendo, like the train entering the tunnel at the end of North by Northwest, the fireworks exploding in the distance in To Catch a Thief. Even the infamous shower scene from Psycho, considered graphic for the time, shows zero nudity and very little blood. It's the rapid editing of deliberate angles that only suggest nudity and violence on screen. And whether it's a love scene or violent scene, Hitchcock employs many of the same techniques. Long, lingering close-ups, the slow approach of the watcher, drawn-out suspense leading to the climax. Just like Truffaut said, if you were to watch many of these scenes out of context, you wouldn't necessarily know if the scenes were romantic or horrific. Here's a scene from Vertigo. Now, if you just watch this moment out of context, it feels romantic. The music, the twirling, the long, lingering kiss. But with the context of the larger story, we know of Scotty's underlying obsession as he methodically changes Judy's clothes and hair so that she'll more closely resemble the woman he once loved. It doesn't feel romantic in context. It feels creepy and unsettling. It's this thin line between hugging and strangling, moaning and screaming, sex and violence, on which voyeurism lives. And Hitchcock believed that we were all voyeurs to some degree. In that same book, Hitchcock Truffaut, he says, "I'll bet you that 9 out of 10 people, if they see a woman across the courtyard undressing for bed, or even a man puttering around in his room, will stay and look. No one turns away and says, 'It's none of my business.' They could pull down their blinds, but they never do. They stand there and look out." Hitchcock believed that there was a voyeur in each of us, with an inherent desire to go places we don't belong and to see things we're not supposed to see. The medium of film allows the audience to experience that process without any risk or consequence. We can watch a woman undress, a man plummet to his death, but there's this understanding between the audience and director that the actor agreed to be filmed. They know they're being watched. There is no real danger. Exploring the concept of voyeurism may be a fun exercise at the movies, but in real life, and in extreme cases, it can lead to unhealthy and dangerous behaviors. And that's exactly what happened with Alfred Hitchcock. Born into a Catholic family at the very end of the 19th century, Hitchcock was a self-described celibate, claiming that he only had sex one time with his wife, which led to the birth of his daughter. And some have suggested that his fascination with voyeurism was a way of him enacting his inner fantasies. It's well documented at this point that he had an affinity for the actresses he worked with. And as a director with power and authority, I'm sure he also felt a certain level of possession over them as well. Just like Jimmy Stewart's character in Vertigo, he could transform these women into whatever he desired. He could dress them up how he liked, and put them in positions and situations that he liked as well. In her book, From Reverence to Rape, The Treatment of Women in the Movies, author Molly Haskell writes, "In Stewart's desperate efforts to remake Judy over and Madeline's image, Hitchcock exposes the romantic impulse to turn women into an art object. In our instinctive preference for the elegant, silent, period Madeline, to the noisy, everyday, modern Judy, we are made aware of both sides of illusionism." Here, Haskell refers to this as a romantic impulse, but I'd argue against that. In both instances, the woman is looked at like an object to control and obsess over. Hitchcock was obsessed with a particular type of woman. It's what's now referred to as the Hitchcock blonde. In Hitchcock Truffaut, Hitchcock says, "Sex on the screen should be suspenseful, I feel. If sex is too blatant or obvious, there's no suspense. You know why I favor sophisticated blondes in my films? We're after the drawing room type, the real ladies, who become whores once they're in the bedroom. Sex should not be advertised. An English girl looking like a school teacher is apt to get into a cab with you, and to your surprise, she'll probably pull a man's pants open." To Hitchcock, the blonde was the perfect antidote to his sexual repression, the graceful beauty that could tempt you towards your darker tendencies. Dial M for Murder, Rear Window, and To Catch a Thief are some of Hitchcock's greatest films, and Grace Kelly, was one of his greatest stars. Finally, a woman who could perfectly embody everything that Hitchcock was looking for, which was what made her early retirement from acting feel all the more like a betrayal. With every subsequent film, he tried to fill the massive void of her absence with other stars like Janet Leigh, Kim Novak, and Eva Marie Saint, but everything changed when he first saw Tippi Hedren. He discovered her from a commercial in 1961 and locked her into an exclusive contract that would span 7 years, essentially allowing him to control her entire acting career. But not only that, he could now control the way that she looked and dressed. With Hedren, Hitchcock finally had the opportunity to mold his ideal of the perfect woman, oddly similar to Jimmy Stewart's character in Vertigo. He cast her as the lead in his 1963 film The Birds, a horror film about a series of inexplicable violent bird attacks that earned Hedren a Golden Globe Award for New Star of the Year. And what seemed to be a promising start for a talented actress came with a lot of controversy behind the scenes. Both cast and crew described Hitchcock's behavior towards Hedren as obsessive. Production designer Robert F. Boyle explained, "Hitch always liked women who behaved like well-bred ladies. Tippi generated that quality. She was trying to make a career as an actor and had signed what seemed like a once-in-a-lifetime chance to work with one of cinema's greatest auteurs. But the pressure of a personal contract, coupled with the general lack of experience in Hollywood, meant that Hitchcock could more easily take advantage of her. He had apparently dictated what she wore off-screen, who she interacted with on set. He sent her inappropriate personal notes and bought her expensive gifts. He kept tabs on where she went in her free time, who she spent time with." Co-star Rod Taylor recounted that Hitch was becoming very domineering and covetous of Tippi, and it was very difficult for her. No one was permitted to come physically close to her during the production. "Don't touch the girl after I call cut," he said to me repeatedly. Columnist Durga Chu Bose wrote about Hitchcock and the hyper-male gaze prevalent in his films. "We experience women only if they are women in danger, or women dead, or women living pint-sized dollhouse narratives, or women as merely bodies who stretch in the morning and curl up into bed at night, who entertain male guests and seem preternaturally built for gliding across the room." Admiration turned into obsession and then turned into possession, which is rather fitting since Hitchcock blondes are usually possessed in one way or another. In Hitchcock's own words, blondes made the best victims. They're like virgin snow that shows up the bloody footprints. The most infamous incident on the set of The Birds came during the end of production, when the scene called for Hedren to be attacked in an attic. Initially, it was going to be filmed with practical effects, using mechanical birds and puppeteering techniques in a single day. But at the last minute, real live birds were brought in to film the scene. Hedren spent 5 days having animal handlers throwing seagulls and ravens at her face and body. When this technique didn't prove effective enough, they tied the birds to her body with wire so that the swarm of attacks would look more convincing. She sustained an injury to her eye and reportedly broke down in tears, and when a physician ordered a week's rest for her to recover from the ordeal, Hitchcock protested. Their relationship only grew worse on their next collaboration, Marnie, a film that Hitchcock called a sex mystery. The entire plot reads like one of his deepest fantasies. The mysterious, sexually repressed brunette turned blonde, blackmailed into a sham marriage, controlled by a man, raped on her wedding night, and later saved by her abuser. There was even more toxic behavior on the set, which led to Hedren vowing that Marnie would be the last picture they would work on together. But Hitchcock still controlled her career through his exclusive contract. He refused to let her work for anyone else. If he couldn't have her, no one else could. Hedren's career was never the same. And in the decades that have followed, with more disturbing information coming to light, including the 2016 release of her own book, Tippi, a memoir, Hitchcock's legacy hasn't been the same either. Wow, this video went really off the rails. I just wanted to explore one of my favorite directors and one of their techniques, and then I dove a little too deep and found some stuff that honestly would be really nice just to look past and ignore. But as we've seen recently with the rise of the Me Too and Time's Up movements, ignoring these things doesn't do anyone any good. If anything, it just silences the victims of these abuses and lets those in power just continue on with their abusive behaviors. So where do we go from here? How do we separate the art from the artist? Should we even do that? Or should we just burn everything they've ever touched? I know for me, it's impossible watching one of his films now without this little reminder in the back of my mind of who he really was, how he viewed and treated women. When I watch his films, so many of his characters end up looking like the shattered fragments of the broken man that he was, sexually repressed and insatiably curious, the unseen voyeur that could look but never touch, desperately trying to trap and hold on to the object of his affection, but destined to lose them all in the end. Separating art from the artist is a difficult conversation, obviously, that requires acknowledgement, perspective, and certainly understanding that comes from listening to those who have gone through this kind of abuse firsthand. I find it very telling that in a number of interviews to promote her book, and also when she was promoting The Girl, a film about her and Hitchcock's turbulent relationship, Tippi Hedren was able to acknowledge the two sides of Hitchcock simultaneously. The genius filmmaker, who has made some of the best films in history, and the abuser, who tormented her and possibly others throughout his career. In an interview with HuffPost Live back in 2012, she said, "I've been able to separate the two. The man who was the artist, what he gave to the motion picture industry can never be taken from him, and I certainly wouldn't be one to try. But on the other side, there is that dark side that was really awful." If you're like me and you love watching classic films across all genres, then you really need to check out Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming service that showcases hand-selected films from around the world. Every day they premiere a new film. Whether it's a timeless classic, cult favorite, or an acclaimed masterpiece, there's always something new to discover. They have so many collections of films, but my favorite is probably their Top 1000, which features classics that everyone needs to see if you want to call yourself a film buff, like Night of the Living Dead, Metropolis, Ghost in the Shell, The General, Charade, and Dogtooth. And there's so many more that I don't have time to mention, so do yourself a favor and go to Mubi.com/entertaintheelk right now so you can start your 1-month free trial, see everything they have to offer, and start enjoying movies. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like it, share it with a friend, and leave me a comment below. If you're not already, please make sure you're subscribed. And also, I've heard from so many people in the past couple months that YouTube isn't sharing my videos with them anymore, which is maddening, frustrating, and so many things. And the only way really to fix that is to click the bell icon below. That way you'll be notified whenever a new video comes out. I hate the way that YouTube is doing this, but it's what we have. So please, if you want to make sure you don't miss any future videos, click the bell below so that way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. If you want to help support this channel and help me make more videos, please go to my Patreon account where I have exclusive rewards for people who support me. Things like early releases of videos, behind the scenes footage, and things like that. It's a great way of helping me make more videos. But another great way you can help me is by supporting the sponsors that I'm pushing. Like in this video, Mubi is an excellent service. Please go check them out, try their free service, use my code below. That really helps me with my relationships with sponsors, which right now, far and away, is the way that helps financially support this channel. I have 2 more videos coming out this month, so stay tuned. Again, click that bell below so that way you won't miss them. And I'll see you all soon. Bye.